Why 2 billion people refuse pork, the ancient survival secret still controlling what we eat. Pork is one of the most consumed meats on Earth, yet it is also one of the most widely rejected. That contradiction alone should make you pause. In one part of the world, it is a daily staple, deeply tied to culture and tradition. In another, it is completely forbidden, not as a matter of taste, but as a strict rule that has endured for thousands of years. What makes this even more fascinating is that no single explanation has ever fully answered why. Historians, anthropologists, and scholars continue to debate the origins of this ban, yet the rule itself remains firmly in place. When a practice survives for that long, it usually points to something deeper than belief alone. It suggests a hidden logic tied to survival. The rule came before the reason. The earliest references to the pork ban appear in ancient religious texts, where the animal is labeled as unclean and forbidden. What stands out is not just the rule itself, but the lack of explanation behind it. The prohibition is stated clearly, yet no detailed reasoning is offered. This silence suggests that the people who first followed the rule already understood its importance. It was not a theory that needed to be explained, but a reality they experienced daily. Over time, however, that understanding began to fade. Generations continued to follow the rule, but the original context disappeared. What remained was a command without a clear origin, passed down through tradition and reinforced through culture. This is how many ancient survival strategies evolve. They begin as practical responses to real problems, then transform into permanent laws that outlast the conditions that created them. The health theory sounds convincing, but incomplete. One of the most widely accepted explanations for the pork ban is health. Pork, when improperly cooked, can carry parasites and diseases, making it potentially dangerous. At first glance, this seems like a logical reason for ancient societies to avoid it. However, this theory does not fully hold up when examined closely. Ancient populations lived in environments where disease was common across all forms of livestock. Cattle, goats, sheep, and birds were all capable of spreading infections, often more severe than those associated with pork. Yet none of these animals were universally banned. If health risks alone were the deciding factor, it would be reasonable to expect a broader set of dietary restrictions. The fact that pork stands out as uniquely forbidden suggests that something more specific was influencing this decision. Health concerns may have reinforced the rule over time, but they likely were not the original cause. The environment shaped the decision. To understand the deeper reasoning, it's necessary to look at the environmental conditions where these rules first emerged. Many of the regions associated with early pork prohibitions were characterized by hot climates, limited water sources, and decreasing forest cover. These conditions placed significant pressure on food systems and really forced communities to make careful choices about which animals to raise. Unlike cattle or goats, pigs cannot survive on grass alone. They rely heavily on the same food sources as humans, such as grains and stored crops. In fertile, forested regions, this isn't a major issue because pigs can forage and feed on a variety of natural resources. However, in dry and resource-scarce environments, this becomes a serious problem. Raising pigs in such conditions means diverting valuable food away from people. It creates direct competition between humans and livestock for survival. In times of scarcity, this is not a sustainable arrangement. Communities that relied heavily on limited resources would have quickly recognized that pigs were an inefficient choice. In contrast, animals like goats and sheep could graze on vegetation that humans could not consume, making them far more practical. This difference in feeding behavior likely played a major role in shaping early dietary practices, from practicality to perception. As pigs became less practical to raise, attitudes toward them began to shift. Humans are highly sensitive to their surroundings, and environmental conditions often influence perception. In hot climates, pigs require mud or water to regulate their body temperature because they cannot sweat. Without these resources, they become overheated and uncomfortable, often appearing dirty and unclean. In crowded settlements where waste management was limited, pigs were frequently associated with filth and unpleasant living conditions. Over time, this association likely contributed to a growing sense of disgust. What began as a practical decision based on efficiency gradually transformed into an emotional and cultural response. Disgust is a powerful force in human behavior. Once something is perceived as unclean or undesirable, it becomes easier to justify avoiding it altogether. This shift from practicality to perception is a key step in understanding how the pork ban evolved. Religion preserved the rule. As societies became more structured, cultural practices were often reinforced through religious systems. Rules that had once been based on survival needs were formalized into laws that governed behavior. This process helped ensure stability and consistency within communities. The prohibition of pork eventually became one of these rules. It was no longer just a practical choice, but a defining characteristic of identity. Following the rules signaled belonging and adherence to a shared set of values. Over time, this strengthened its importance and ensured its survival across generations. Once a rule becomes tied to identity, it gains a level of permanence that is difficult to challenge. Even as environmental conditions change and the original reasons become less relevant, the rule continues to hold meaning. A survival strategy turned cultural law. The enduring nature of the pork ban highlights an important aspect of human history. Many traditions that appear purely cultural or religious today may have originated as practical solutions to real problems. In this case, the combination of environmental limitations, resource management, and social behavior likely contributed to the development of the rule. There is no single explanation that fully accounts for its origin. Instead, it is the result of multiple factors working together over time. What began as a response to specific conditions gradually became a deeply rooted practice that shaped entire civilizations. Why it still matters. Today, billions of people continue to follow this ancient rule. While modern technology has changed the way food is produced and consumed, the influence of historical decisions remains strong. The pork ban serves as a reminder that human behavior is often shaped by forces that extend far beyond the present moment. Understanding these patterns offers valuable insight into how societies adapt and survive. It reveals how practical decisions can evolve into lasting traditions, and how those traditions continue to influence the world long after their original purpose has faded. In the end, the mystery of the pork ban is not just about food, it's about the complex relationship between environment, culture, and survival. It's a story of how humanity learned to navigate its challenges and how those lessons were preserved in ways that still affect billions of lives today.